members of the human family. Today is the 8th of May, 2024. I am Ajman Wugdi in Mohammedia, Morocco. Welcome to the General Durability Podcast. My guest today is a reprogramming expert, and he is here to help us in our quest for knowledge, ultimately self-knowledge. Welcome, Mr. Sanders. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Shukran jazeelan. It's
Yeah,
great to be here. And yeah, I mean, let's just have some fun. This is a nice opportunity. Thank you.
yeah, great. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself and how it came to be that you engage with brain reprogramming?
All right, that's a really, really good question. Can you hear I have an English accent?
Yes, yes, yes. Not an extreme one, but a mild one.
No, no, that's right. So I was born in England, in the UK, and at the age of 6, my parents took us out to Singapore. We traveled to Singapore for 3 years. And then the age of 10, we left England, we left Singapore, and we went to Northern Ireland, so 60 to 65, and then back to England, and then a lot of travel in between. The reason I mention that is because having such a big input, cultural input at a very young age, it changes you. It really does. It changes you. And you don't see the things the way that everyone else does when you're quotes back home in England. And that can be a disadvantage or an advantage. In my case, I turned it into an advantage. And I'm a multidisciplinist. I'm primarily a voice actor.
Because I can do funny voices.
But
Yeah,
that doesn't
that's a good one. That's a good one.
but it doesn't pay the bills, you know. It's like, oh, that's very clever. You know, can you do some more? Well, you know, I'm a very poor man, you know. So I did electrical engineering, and although I surprised myself because I got a first-class honors in electrical engineering, and my company at the time, British Aircraft, offered me a PhD in engineering or a master's in a closely related field. And I didn't want to do more engineering. As an artist, it didn't suit me. I liked it. I mean, it was clever. It was like a puzzle. So I took applied psych or developmental psychology, industrial psychology, lots of skills, lots of methodological issues that you have to deal with. And in particular, how circuits work, how brain circuits work. Because my electrical engineering background gave me insight into, well, what does a healthy neural circuit look like and what does it not look like? What's an unhealthy neural circuit start to look like?
Yes, because there is a lot of similarities with the brain.
Yeah, there are. It's not a one-to-one comparison, but it's a handy place to start. And I think as long as you realize you're working with a cartoon sketch of reality, it doesn't, you don't get into too much trouble, right? Because you know you have an incomplete description. Now I got my my master's in applied psych, my undergraduate in electrical engineering, and I figured, well, it's time for me to somehow fuse them together. So I took a PhD in cybernetics. And for those of you who can't quite remember what cybernetics is, it's the study of large, messy, probabilistic, goal-oriented systems, which again is another mouthful. It basically means how do systems steer themselves? How do our brains steer itself? How does an economy steer itself? And so it's quite a subtle. It's a very subtle discipline. In fact, some people call it the great unfinished scientific project because it's always evolving. But having a PhD in cybernetics now gave me the opportunity to look at this question of, can the brain change itself? Because I needed to know that it could change itself, because I failed to mention that I was born with a horrendous case of eczema. And I'll tell you, when you're a young man and you have eczema and you're in love with Valerie or Yvonne, whoever just walked by with a short skirt. It's the most depressing thing to come across because they're always washing their hair. So I had a real deep need to find out, A, can the brain change itself? And B, can I change my brain? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can.
Yes.
The thing is that in the West, the danger with the Western thinking is that it's very arrogant, very arrogant.
No,
Nothing.
I can assure you of that. I lived in many locations in the West. I am a Westerner, and I can, yeah, there is a lot of arrogance, especially the this in what we call scientism.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
there
yes.
is this word I throw it. Yeah,
Thank you, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, there is. And the thing is, I've been a student of yoga since the age of 19 and a half. I'm now 75. So although I'm not a very good yoga student, I've got a lot of time under my belt. And I can tell you, the yogis 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years ago figured out that the brain could change itself. This idea of neuroplasticity, that the brain or the neural substrate is reprogrammable or can program itself, first came out really in 1972 with the rat studies, where they stuck a bunch of rats in what are called enriched environments, where they had lots of things to play with and so on. And they're sort of the twin mates, if you like. They were the control group. They were fed. They were in a very plain environment, and they had nothing really to do all day. Unfortunately, when when the end of the experiment came, they were sacrificed in the name of science. They found when they took the sections of the two rats' brains, the one had a lot of dendritic structure, very, very complex brain, where they had been playing, where they had to solve puzzles and problems, whereas in the other case, there was very little dendritic. And that's where the Westerners gave themselves permission to finally believe what the yogis knew all along, that yes, the brain can change itself.
Okay, great. We take it from here. The brain is 100% can change itself. I am my own experience, I know that, and I'm very mindful and aware of it. Let's dive into some details. For example, in today's
Okay.
world, we have
Yes.
a lot of crises. People talk all the time about climate change, corona, epidemic, wars, etc., are producing anxiety. People around the world, especially young people,
Yes.
have suffer from anxiety, stress, burnout, depression.
Yes.
I saw a lot of useful things in your website. Can you
Thank you.
give us practical guidelines, some things to follow to reduce anxiety, to reduce stress in easy ways?
Yes. Yes. Mental discomfort is more and more common, as you and I both know. And you've put your finger on probably the most frequent, although, they're sort of tied for first place, things like depression. But I think a good place to start is anxiety. And what I look for is, now let me just say this. You don't need devices or artifacts to actually interrupt discomfort patterns that you're carrying, all right? The difficulty is it takes a lot of practice to be able to do it. So I have, over the years, discovered that there are a number of tools that we can use inexpensively, use them at home around the $500 mark. No, I do not sell them. But the most common and the most useful of these tools at the moment is a thing called cranial electrostimulation. Cranial electrostimulation.
What is this?
So cranial electrostimulation is a small box And in fact, one second, can you find me the this program? So what this device is that I'm going to talk about is a frequency generator that generates frequencies in the range that our brains can detect. In particular, this device hangs on your ears, and you only need to do it 20 minutes a day, 25, maybe 45 minutes a day. And what it is, see, these are carbon electrodes. Carbon electrode. And then what I do is I set this device on and I set it up. And what is running de-stresses my brain, helps my brain relax. And it helps my brain feel good. So in other words, it interrupts the patterns that most people get trapped in of ain't it awful, and worry, and this going, no, I don't know what's going on, it's going to get with me. Now all I need to do is I just need to put my CES device on, and there are about 4 or 5 of them, very good ones that you can buy internationally. Don't spend more than $500 or $600, ladies and gentlemen, because they're all the same. And what it does is it talks to your amygdala. Your amygdala is part of your fear system. You need an amygdala, otherwise you would be dead. You couldn't judge risk. Unfortunately, in our modern environment, your amygdala can get turned on and stay on because it builds a cybernetic loop between itself and your adrenal glands. Now you self-simulate yourself with adrenaline, and the thing goes round and round and round until you go crazy or you have adrenal exhaustion. By using a cranial electrostimulation device, you interrupt that, give yourself the chance to get rid of the adrenaline byproducts and now begin to see the world sanely. That's probably the quickest and easiest way of dealing with, I would say, 40 to 50% of all the mental discomfort on the planet today. Wow, that's a pretty bold statement, Dr. Saunders. Yeah, it's because I run an online clinic and I get the chance to see these effects practically every day. So I hope that helps.
It helps reduce anxiety, stress. What about depression?
Yes. Let's talk a bit about depression. There are different forms of depression. Some forms of depression actually yield very nicely to cranial electrostimulation, but not all of them. So in this case, this particular device has different electrodes. It's too complicated to show you right now, but it has different electrodes. And the technique we use there with these different electrodes is called, you ready for another big one? Here we go, transcranial direct current stimulation, or TDCS. In using TDCS, what we do now is we address the Brodmann areas, the appropriate Brodmann areas responsible for depression. And a Brodmann area, ladies and gentlemen, is an area, a sub-area on the scalp of your brain, on the top of your brain, which deals with different types of computations. Let's say hearing, or feeling where your arm is, or planning to make a movement. So it's those circuits, those neural circuits, that you need to interrupt so that sanity can regain its awareness. So that's how I deal with depression most of the time.